Zero.
Welcome again to Radical World, the podcast. I'm Jose Leal, along with my co-host. Well, I don't know. Do we call you a host, Matt? You're my partner. Are you hosting?
I'm the hostess.
You're a hostess. Our co-hostess, Matt Perez. Welcome, Matt, and welcome to the folks listening to us. So, Matt, we thought we would talk a little bit about co-ops, collaboration, collaboratives, radical companies. And I'd like to start by doing a little bit of an intro. What is it that we're talking about? So we all know the typical company. The vast majority of people work in what we would call a fiat company, which is an organization where the employees have very little power. They are told what to do, they are told how to do it. They don't own any of the company, and they certainly don't manage the company. That's the definition of that we've created, which is actually that you've created. That is a fiat company.
And,
Fiat meaning that somebody's in control.
and the only impact is money. Is
And that's the goal.
how rich can I get? And by using these people, and that's the main thing. But the things you said about not having control, not having ownership, not having anything other than your salary. You should be grateful for your salary.
Right. And so that's how most people, myself included in the past, have operated, working for an organization that is a fiat company that hires people, uses them, gets rid of them when they don't need them anymore, and so on. And then there is what we've written about in our book that we co-wrote, Radical Companies. And that book, we talked about what would it be if we made a radical change in the way we organize to a radical company. A radical company to us is an organization where people are both co-owners and co-managers. So they are not just um, workers. They, in fact, are part of the ownership class, if you want to call it a class, and they're also part of the management class. So they play a role in how the organization is run. And that work has led us to exploring how do we create these companies. And we've had some experimentation with working with folks on that. And as of late, we've been working with the idea that there is a class of company that actually has a leg up on the traditional fiat company. And that is the collaborative. A collaborative, pardon me, a co-op,
Co-op.
misspoke there. A co-op is an organization that already exists. There are a few of them, not very many, but there are a few of these types of organizations. And they have a leg up on the fiat companies in that they are already co-owned. Now, we have some concerns about how they're co-owned, and we can talk a little bit about that. That's what we'll be talking about today, because last month in San Diego, we presented at the California Co-op Conference. We had a couple of workshops there where we presented radical companies in the form of local cooperative collaboratives. And that's a new type of model that we're proposing for the organizations that are co-ops. And we got a good reception, a very good reception. And so wanted to explore that with Matt and have a conversation here with you folks around that topic. So Matt, when it comes to a co-op, co-ownership. We've done some research into that. We understand. We've spoken to a lot of the co-ops here in the Bay Area. What would you say is kind of the difference between co-op ownership and a radical company ownership?
Well, the main thing is co-ops make more of an issue of equality. They want everybody to be equal and stuff like that. And with radical, it's more of equitability. In other words, if you contribute, you get more. If you don't contribute, you get less. And that's the one complaint that I get from I've gotten from people who are in co-ops that, well, I do all the work, but these two guys over here don't do any of the work, and they get the same thing. And that's the main difference is the equality versus equitability. And we're more into equitability.
Right. And so that means that it's about us having what's owed to us based on the effort we put in.
Yeah.
Right. That we get what's, for lack of a better way of saying it, what's fair.
Yes.
And we as human beings have a very good, finely tuned sense of what's fair. If I put in more effort than you do, and I start to feel like something's not right.
Well, it turns out that monkeys and dogs and cats, I don't know about cats.
Oh yeah.
Other mammals, at least, have a sense of,
Fairness.
hey, I did the same as you. How come you're getting a grape and I'm getting a nut or something? And
built into it.
They've done this experiments, and lo and behold, if you take two monkeys in a cage, each in its own cage, you make them do something, and then you give one a grape and one a nut. The one that gets the nuts gets pissed off. It's like, hey, he's getting grape. How come I'm not getting grape? Because grapes, I guess, are more valuable than nuts. They have sugar, I guess. And I like sugar. So
basically, you're just an ape.
Yeah, and so it's very basic that if you do more, you should get more. If you do less, you should get less. The problem with capitalism is they really find all that thing. I mean, they're using that formula, if you will, but they base it on money. If you have more money, you're worth more. If you have less money, you're worth less. And when the whole, before there was a market, when the whole thing of share companies started in Netherlands, they were more fair about the whole thing. But it was a community. It was based on something, and the only thing they could measure at the time was money. So if you have $2 and I have $1, then you have more than me, but you risk more than me.
Right.
And today we have a supercomputer in our pocket. I'm trying to get it out of my pocket, and this is a supercomputer that we all carry in our pocket, and I call it a supercomputer because the computer that I started out with many years ago was not even, I think it's 0.1 of the speed, and we still managed to do something, but this is a supercomputer. So there's an app for a supercomputer that calculates your contributions, and turns them into something Canto, RAS. And I mean, we're in a different age that we can do those things. We should be moving forward. The thing I object to with co-ops, it's still stuck in the paradigm of we're all equal because we don't know how to count any other way. And I think there are better ways now. I think we
Right.
can hire
Before we go down the how do we do it better,
yeah.
I was going to bring up that at the conference, the keynote brought up Mondragon and all the good things that Mondragon did from a community perspective. And it did do a lot of good from the community perspective. And I think we both agree with that.
They're very generous.
Well, not only that, they've created banking facilities, health facilities. So they've created a community of cooperativism, which is different than what we have here in the States of co-ops. So we've got a co-op here and a co-op there, and they do work well together for the most part, but it's not a community and it's not a multi-sector group of things where you see banking and healthcare and a number of other services also cooperative in nature, also helping each other out. But one of the things that I mentioned to that keynote speaker was that Mondragon, as you've having been there pointed out, Mondragon does. And for those folks who don't know what Mondragon is the largest co-op in the world. It is in northern Spain and has been around, I'm not sure how long, Matt, it's 50, 60 years?
Since after the Spanish War, which was before World War II.
Right, yeah. So even longer, so 67 years. And one of the things I'd like you to describe, because you brought it to my attention, the idea of these owners every couple of years, these so-called co-owners of the business, going on strike.
Not every couple of years, but the example, but they had a huge strike when Fargo or something, the very first co-op that came out, that eventually formed Mondragon, and they were in the appliance business, big white appliances, washing machines, and that kind of stuff, and all the people around them were one by one closing down, and they thought, this is a temporary thing, and if we have more money to invest to keep us alive for a couple of years, then we would get past it, and people have to buy this thing. Well, it turns out that the money didn't do the trick, and the money had come from their I guess the community fund or something, but that's where retirement came from. That's where they're very generous. They even have a fund for taking trips around the world and stuff like that. All of that was used to pay for this bet that we're doing. And when it didn't work out, the good news is that most people got jobs elsewhere. So not like here where we say, we have 10,000 people more than we need to, so let's fire them. They're very good that way. But they didn't have any of their accumulated wealth to count on, and they went out on strike. you think about it, you were owners, right? You voted for this thing to be okay. Why are you striking? You're taking a risk. And my guess is that they didn't see it as risk. If the managers said it was a good thing, it was a good thing. Vote for it. And they wanted, yeah, vote for it. And and there's been other strikes since, but I'm not familiar with them. But this one I was familiar with because before I went there, I read about um, these things, and Wikipedia has very good articles on what went on. And when I asked the question, what about this thing? They said, yeah, that was a mistake. So, but I think it's a built-in mistake.
And that built-in mistake comes from the fact that you have a leadership class that
Yeah.
is voted into power, and that even though everybody has a vote within the so-called shared ownership, they they can only exercise their vote to vote leadership in. They don't actually get to be, for the
Right.
most part, involved in the decision making.
Right.
Once that leadership is in, they operate as CEOs and VPs and directors and everything else, as a traditional organization would.
And like I said, they have things like the salaries are going to be 1 to 6
Right.
instead of 1 to 354, and which is
Let me just say what that means, because I know
yeah,
what that means, but maybe not everybody understands. That the average employee, their salary is only 6 times that to the CEO of the company that is getting paid
right,
a 6x of the average employee. And so that would mean that those folks, one, they may be getting paid a little bit better as cooperative employees, but their bosses are not getting paid exorbitant amounts like 300,
right,
400 times
right.
what the average frontline folks are getting paid.
Which is what we pay here
Right.
to CEOs. And
If not thousands of times more.
well, the biggest number I've read is 354, but there's got to be more. So, anyways, so that was the situation there, and
Right.
it's still a situation that. And there's another thing. They also have Mondragon Enterprises here in Mexico. I'm in California, so I'm not allowed to say here in Mexico. And in other places, I think Peru or something, and Honduras, and Spanish-speaking places. But they're not co-ops.
Right.
They're. I mean, it's more.
They're run as fiat companies.
They're more of a imperialist model of I'm your boss, I invested money in this, and therefore we're going to be generous and stuff like that, and they are, but but they don't vote on things like we're going to move all the funds to investment funds instead of social class. So that's one of the big problems. Sorry about the phone.
So thinking through the idea of a co-op and starting with Mondragon, the largest in the world, makes sense. But we have lots of examples here in the Bay Area, for example, of American-born, American living co-ops that are, struggling in some cases, but in most cases doing well and successfully growing and operating well. And we've known some of those folks where
Right.
our experience has been that there's a lot more camaraderie
Yes.
in those groups, and that there's a lot more flexibility in those groups.
And the mindset is they want the same things. They're just stuck with systems that are old,
Right.
1800 old.
Right. Right.
So
And so one of the things that I know you and I both feel could change in co-ops is this idea of one person, one vote. Because voting essentially creates winners and losers.
yes,
Even though you're being democratic in nature, which is a term that's very much, I think, a thing of pride within the cooperative movement, that it is democratic. But in reality, what we're doing is we're voting for leadership in many cases, and we're voting for some major decisions in some cases. But that means that some of our colleagues are losing.
right.
And some of our colleagues that backed another leader will lose. Some that chose a different option will lose. So what's wrong with that? Like, that's the way the world works, right?
So when I went to Verona, which is another that they call it the middle, but it's not the middle. It's above the coast, and it's very there's a co-op for everything. Toilet paper. There's a co-op for that. Whatever. I'm making this up, but then I talked to some of the people that worked at these co-ops, and this guy told me in a very pronounced way. He said, "What chance do I have to end up at the leadership team, in the leadership class?"
Right.
These are people who started the co-op, have done very well by co-op, are very generous to all of us. And what's missing there is the not just there, it's the world over, is the thought of, well, maybe money is not all there is to it. Maybe that effort of owning everything is not what all there is to it. And he said, what chance do I have of getting to that class? I'm doing my work. I'm doing my chores, and I don't have time to, or I don't even think
Right.
it's possible.
Right.
And I thought, well, that's interesting. There's a voting, but always for the same ticket.
Right, because you're not going to displace the leader, because the leader is the one that has all of the secrets, knows all the information, has all the experience. But our issue isn't that there are people who are leaders. Our issue is that leadership isn't well distributed in organizations.
Right.
And that when organizations only have a leader with another, somebody underneath, a bunch of people underneath that are the leadership class, that means that everybody else are followers. And so when we have co-ops of followers, and we think that can be improved. How do we improve the idea of not voting for leadership, but having what we call co-management, where everyone is involved in the leading process to whatever level they need to be involved in. It doesn't mean that everybody's making all the decisions all the time.
Right.
But if you're in a team that's doing this kind of work and there are decisions to be made, it is your team that makes those decisions. Now, if your decision is going to impact other teams, then those teams, along with you, make that decision. And if a decision involves the whole organization, well, then maybe everybody needs to be involved in some way. But it is not, we're not talking about uh, making everybody a leader of the organization per se. We're talking about making everybody a leader of the area of work that they're responsible for, the area of influence that their team deals with.
And that they're comfortable being a leader in that shit. I mean, for a long time, we lived with Fiat since before the Kings and stuff like that. But so it's going to last a lot longer. And so people won't feel comfortable for a while, although I've seen the change happen, and it could happen very quickly with some people. Not everybody is playful, but with some people is very very quick. It happens, automatically. And the thing is, things that you want to get involved in, and that would it'll reduce the class of people that want to involve because they're still involved in Fiat. You said something about the way we used to be. I'm still Fiat, but I have 72 or 3. I don't know. Years of being trained in the Fiat environment.
Right.
And you don't shake that in a day.
No. And the future of non-Fiat organizations is not in the hands of 73-year-olds. It's in the hands of 23-year-olds. That's the future.
It's in the hands of everybody. But 23-year-olds are more likely to
exactly
blur it out. And,
right. Because they're closer to those desires for meaning and belonging and everything else that comes along with what the Fiat company restrains and constrains.
Yes.
And that's why people feel so disengaged at work, because they're just being asked to play a limited role, not be engaged, not be participating, have very little meaning in their work. And a sense of belonging is never really considered.
No, it's never.
And for most organizations, it's not. And so what I came out of that conference was this huge sense that the co-op movement is really a step closer,
yes,
to becoming what we call a radical company, in that they've already got the mindset of cooperation.
Yes.
What I think it's missing is this mindset of collaboration. So they cooperate, but they don't do the management together. They don't organize in a co-managing way.
Right.
And that's what I call collaboration. Literally working together. And that process of thinking about a cooperative in a collaborative way, both inside the organization and outside the organization, building collaborative communities of businesses, not just of companies, not just thinking of it as a isolated entity, but an entity that is working with a community. That, to me, what the response that we got out of the co-op conference here in California led me to believe that we have we're not starting at ground zero. Right. We actually have a pre-existing community of folks that are already eager to participate in this new model, and that our work is to really join them in bringing these ideas to the table and these opportunities to the table. So you talked about, we should wrap it up, but you talked about the idea of contribution. So one of the things that we've done over the last year plus is we've developed an application called RADS. The latest version just got released this week. It's on both the Play Store and the Apple Store. And both of them operate in the same way, which is the ability to build a community, to define a community that represents your business, represents a group of people that work together, represents a group of people that are in communion in some way, and be able to share with each other recognitions of each other's work as a way to move away from transactional work
Right.
to relational work, to
Right.
start to track these things. And so that's a tool that we're bringing to the community, and we'd like to offer to the co-op community as well, as part of the tool sets that are available to help move them in the direction of collaboration within the context of the co-op space, because it is a space that already pre-exists. So I think that's enough for this week. We'll keep it short and sweet, because I think that was an intro to this conversation, but I think we'll have more in the future. Did you want to introduce our guest for next week?
Yeah, the guest for next week is Josh Allen Distra. Oh, there it is. And he's chief officer and co-founder of Love Work, and it's a training company that he says is a training company that turns information into habit formation in 5 minutes a day. So it sounds interesting. Seeking to create a world where everyone can love work. And so that's for next week.
Yeah.
And
I've had a couple of conversations with Josh, and the work that they're doing is very much in alignment with what we're talking about, which is
right.
How do we change work for the better? How do we improve the way we work? So I look forward to that conversation.
And I was in a kind of a conference thing years ago with Josh, and yeah, I believe that we're aligned the same way, although I would use different words, but
Yeah.
work is that a world where everyone can love work. What I would change there is that it's not work. This whole idea of work and life and work and life and work, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Notice, for one thing, that you are in both those places, and it has to do with you. Here you do the more I don't know what to call it, work of keeping your family alive and and here you do the other work of keeping your bigger family alive, the community that's doing the work. But it's all coming out of you. It's all coming out of you, being offered to the community, and then the community rehashing it. So yeah, just a good guy.
Yeah. Looking forward to that. So thank you, Matt, for this conversation. It was enjoyable. Hopefully we can start having some conversations with the cooperative community as a whole, as we reach out to them to start to do some of this work together in how we can collaborate. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us for the Radical World of the podcast, and we'll see you next week.